In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. Today, we are going to dig into data and what is data, what is useful data, and how the AI tools that exist may help us make better business decisions, and how maybe we don't even need an AI tool to do it. So we're going to ask Kevin Hannigan, who is a senior leader that transforms, innovates, and continuously improves organizations to make them the best they can be. His passion is the intersection of business, tech, learning, and psychology. He believes the world is constantly evolving, and we should always be evolving and improving ourselves in business and in our personal life. Kevin, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you for having me, Emanuel. It's a good topic for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have an interesting educational background where you have a computer science and organizational focused, which is a little unusual for comp sci guys. It means you either are interested in emotional intelligence or you have some emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully both. But yeah, I started out as a techie, but I realized there's so much more than technology. Everyone needs to think differently and use data. So I started going more into the organizational side, adult learning, stuff like that. And it was this sweet spot. Like you said, it's a niche. There's not many people that have the full spectrum, but it gives you that whole diverse perspective, right? Because I can look at things from different lenses.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's start at the fundamental here. And let's just say, what is business data that helps us make sense of our business?
Yep. So I think first thing, when we say data, anyone who's listening, if they kind of cringe and be like, time out, not for me, wrong podcast, move on. That's the problem, right? Is people have this, because you grew up in math class and data is numbers, and then it's like algebra, and then it's statistics. And they think it translates into business where you have to be a data scientist, you have to be a hardcore analyst. Data, just reframe it in your head. Data is information. Data is evidence. Data can be someone telling you a story, like a customer sharing feedback on a social media post. That's data. There's components that are quantitative, but the quantitative just tells you historically what happened. The qualitative is really what you want for marketing and to drive your business, because you understand what they're thinking about, why they're thinking, you understand their sentiment. So to me, business data is everything. It's the numbers, but it's the sentiment. It's the non-structured data. It's anything that you hear. I mean, I did a strategic leader training course a couple of weeks ago, and I was teaching a SWOT, and everyone was kind of like going through it excited. And I was like, okay, I played a trick on you. You just analyzed data. And they're looking at it, but there was no numbers. I'm like, I know, but how did you come up with the strengths? You're like, well, I surveyed, I looked at that. That's information. So I think that's the first thing we have to get over is everyone deals with data today, and it's not just numbers.
I love that. And so you described a situation where you're having conversation with people. Is there a way that we can use Claude or ChatGPT to do similar activity with, say, our LinkedIn feed?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is I'm not a marketer by trade. I know my business, but I don't, and I know how to be empathetic and I know how to do design thinking, but sometimes I don't have access to those populations. So one of the best use cases I found with those generative solutions is I don't have it create content for me. I create the content and then I ask it, what am I missing? What different perspectives? So I could almost simulate, like I could say to Claude, I want to run a campaign to increase engagement. Well, okay, but it's going to then come back to me if I prompt it in a way that says, ask me, challenge me. It could say, well, what does engagement mean to this audience? Are there behaviors you're trying to encourage? Those are things I'm not thinking of because I'm not natively a marketer. So I use it to play not devil's advocate, but to augment my thinking and say, what am I missing? Or if I create a marketing campaign, I could say, here's my campaign, here's my audience. What assumptions am I making here? What am I missing? What are some ways that I might not see it resonate? So you could almost do kind of like A/B testing in real time with these types of tools. I could share some data with it about my marketing campaign, like the click-through rate. And I could say, I'm interpreting it this way, but what could be missing? What could be another interpretation? They might come up with things like seasonality and other things for that. So it's a huge game changer, but not just in creating content, but just making me think better about the content I'm creating.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting way where you're using one of the GPTs to be a consultant with you at that point, right? Or a thinking partner.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then how would you say, let's say an email campaign, I've got 6 emails that I sent last week, and then I have people opening, people who are clicking, people who are responding. What kind of rubric would I push that data through in order to generate some better results for my group?
Yeah, I mean, from a data perspective, I'd obviously want to look at things like the impressions, the click-through rates. But I think now what we're seeing with AI is it's not just a toolkit to do things faster. It's a toolkit to think differently. So I don't want to think about like when I used to drop my newsletters every Wednesday. I don't necessarily want to think now, okay, what's the next drop? I want to kind of be that continuous journey. So from that data, I'm looking at it to understand what are reasons why this segment's not reacting to it? What are some other alternate paths that I haven't considered with this population? What could this group have misunderstood about my message or taken the wrong way, especially if it's a global audience and I'm not aware of everyone's culture? I might even ask it proactively before I do that, before I get the data, how might a skeptical customer reply to this message? So I'm still looking at those click-through rates, but instead of just using it to describe, I'm using AI and data to diagnose. Why was this less? Why was this? And give me strategies, because I'm only one brain. And again, I'm not a marketer. So I can analyze the heck out of the data, but I don't understand nuance and subtlety of different cultures or different demographics that AI can. So it's not so much that I'm looking at different data. I'm just asking different questions. I'm trying to go from describing what happened to diagnosing why did it happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. And analyzing, right? Having the AI analyze for you, and then posit some things that maybe you hadn't thought about, and then you can take the next step, which is what do I implement in order to see if there's a change or not, right? So it's a couple steps. Yeah,
exactly. I think about it now as I'm not trying to do like a campaign. I'm trying to create an experience, and AI is helping me do that where I couldn't do that before.
I love it. Well, Kevin, talk to me a little bit about some interesting deployments or educational experiences with your clients you've had recently, some success stories.
Yeah, so we had one, customer where, I go in a lot of times and I'll teach people data analytics. I'll teach them whatever tool they of choice, even if it's Excel, how to analyze, how to create a bar chart, how to do these things. The challenge that we've had fundamentally, and I don't want to go on my podium or preaching box, but we teach people tools. We don't teach them how to think.
Good. Yeah.
So they might know that if I follow these 27 steps in this activity, there's going to be a bar chart at the end. Did they learn why I needed to create it? What question was I asking? What insights or not? So using like AI and data, we're trying to now pivot to teach people thinking skills. And it sounds silly, but we learn as kids, and this goes back to my learning theory, is when we're kids, our brains are empty. So how do we learn about us is we ask why. It drives us all crazy as parents. Like the kids like, why? When you think about it, we stop asking, and that's because our long-term memory is full. And it's because the culture tells us not to. So if I'm in school and I'm in high school or college and I politely question the professor, usually they're like, don't question me. I have years of experience. It's not that culture. And then you go into your first job and you're in a meeting and you want to politely challenge someone, and it's not an open culture. And then the boss is like, I'm the boss. So we lose that critical thinking. So one of the biggest success stories I've had is bringing it back to adults, having them think differently about the data, understand the bias, understand. I give these stories all the time where you could do everything right from data. You could do everything right from analytics and AI and insights. And the thing that could cause the worst decision is you didn't challenge an assumption. A very simple thing
Right.
you thought was true wasn't true. Now, that's not a tool. That's not data. That's not AI. That's the human brain.
Sure.
So it's weird answering that on a technology podcast, but the most biggest success stories I've had is having people's kind of brains think more about critical thinking and think more about diversity in the terms of diversity of thought, like getting different perspectives from that angle.
Yeah, I love that. And I think sometimes we get so driven by timelines, budgets, days off, whatever the external forces are on a project, that we kind of lose this fundamental philosophical position as a human to say, well, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? And what did we collect? And was that what I wanted to collect? And what are we going to do? And is it complete or incomplete? And what could possibly be missing, right? Like
you bring up a really good point. Is going back to success stories. I've worked with hundreds of companies, and what fascinates me is I don't think they intentionally do it backwards, but they start with the data. They build a data warehouse. They build a data lake. They build a visualization to try to find the needle in the haystack. They don't start with, what are we trying to do? What is the question? So like no matter what training course I teach, the first thing I teach is you start with the question. You start with the goal. A lot of people are familiar with what they call false positives, false negatives. Like in math, they're called type 1, type 2 errors. The biggest error in business is a type 3 error. It's where you did everything right, but you asked the wrong question.
Yeah. Stephen Covey says, "Stop, wrong forest."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's see. What I know you just recently have come out and working in your own firm, and then, but what's next for you? What are you looking forward to in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to teaching critical thinking skills, consulting on those are not mainstream. And I don't want to say that I just want to like do that myself. I think as businesses, as we advance more and more technology, we need to advance our brains equally. And we're not doing that, unfortunately. I think the pace of technological growth is growing faster because we're learning the tool. We're not learning to think. AI isn't a toolkit, it's a mindset. And that's the problem. Yeah. Data is the same way. And so I'm hoping that personally, but then as a society over the next year to two, we start going back to teaching things like critical thinking with data, challenging assumptions. Bias is real and it impacts both of these. And we kind of have to change just like when we went through the Industrial Revolution. We went through the printing press, right? We used to write everything down by hand, and then we had printing press so we could scale. We could do things different than the scientific revolution, the Industrial Revolution, automated things. With data and AI, it's not taking our jobs away. It's giving us a chance to think higher and more strategically. But that's a mind shift change. So a lot of people, unfortunately, say AI, it's going to automate things. It is, but it's also going to help you do things that you couldn't do before. It's not just making things better. It's making better things. It's different mindset.
Yeah, I really appreciate that sentiment, and I agree that obviously this is a tool. To me, it's as big as the implementation of fire in a lot of ways. In that it is a time saver. In that I can take a massive amount of content and churn it and summarize it instantly. Something that would take me 4 hours, or editing a podcast, it would take my team 6 to 10 hours. Now we can do it in an hour. I mean, that is massive time savings. Yeah. Let's hope we're in the right forest, number one. And then let's hope that once we free up that time, that we do something valuable, either for our family, our friends, ourselves, or for the long-term viability of the business. And then we've applied the tool correctly.
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, I love the sentiment. the critical thinking part also is interesting. I think culturally in the United States, we've lost that capacity, A, to critically, and B, to disagree with each other and still be colleagues and collegial, right?
It's a shame, but that's the biggest problem I see right now is like, if you think about where we make the best decisions, it's because we have a diversity of thought and different perspectives. And when we don't, because of cultural reasons, we're going backwards, not forwards.
I think not just a diversity of thought, but then also an acceptance that just because I have my opinion, I'm not right. Right. So there's a certain amount of the ability to agree to disagree, but still honor and value the person who I'm disagreeing with. Right.
Absolutely. And part of that is just human nature, right? Our brains want to be right. So one of the classes I teach is the difference between dialogue and discussion and in debate, right? When you're having a discussion, we don't know this, but what we're subconsciously doing is we're trying to listen to how to prove the other person wrong and we're right. So we're not really listening. So one of the tenets of active listening is you suppress judgment and you just understand. So in a dialogue, your goal isn't decision A or decision B. It's, I want to understand what you're saying. And then you go back and you decide. And it's amazing that we don't do that as much anymore. But like you said, that's part of the challenge is we all have short time spans. We want to get it right. We fear failing. So we just want to win unconsciously.
Yeah. And so some psychologists say that state of condition that would be being in a state of survival, right?
Yes.
Versus the an open intellectual position. And so it's an interesting challenge as a leader to create conditions that are in a more of a abundant and without punitive repercussions to opinions and even errors in the business, right? And being able to adjust as new data comes in and realigning with the ultimate goals.
Well, everyone has a boss, right? So everyone has timeframes, and now we live in either a monthly or a quarterly cadence with like public companies that it's hard to do that. Whereas, maybe millions of years ago when the brain evolved, it was, how do we build shelter, get fire, survive from getting eaten from a dinosaur? You all work collectively. You didn't have like the boss saying, okay, you missed your number 2 months in a row, you're going to get fired.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's see, how do companies get started working with you? What's kind of like the first training that you do with a new client?
It's personalized based off what they want, but a lot of times the training I'll start with is kind of like demystifying data and AI and trying to teach them that it's a mindset. It's not a toolkit. So I talk about how data could just not be numbers, right? It's information, it's evidence. And our goal is to add context to it. So I use a lot of from knowledge management, there's something called the data, information, knowledge, wisdom hierarchy. And I kind of educate them that data, like the number 12 or a story where someone said bad experience, by itself, it can mean anything. So what do you do to make it more valuable? How do you add the context? How do you aggregate it? How do you understand what assumptions are made to get to ultimately wisdom, which is you've come up with the why, you've tested it, you validated it, and you now move forward with a strategy, but having the culture that you can iterate over time still in a safe place. Like we're not talking about analysis paralysis because everyone would lose their jobs because you're not doing anything, but there's a speed component that we educate on that. And then we can go down paths around data, critical thinking skills, tools like AI and so forth. But it really depends where they are at a maturity level.
Yeah, I love it. And then what about your website or LinkedIn, or where would you prefer?
Yep. So, well, LinkedIn, I think there's only 2 Kevin Hannigans. There's me, and then there's someone else who's in oceanography. So if you see oceanography, it's the other one. And then my website's turningdataintowisdom.com. And there you can go and there's free articles, free videos, free webinars. And then there's a paid for where you can get a few more like tools and learning pathways. And you can contact me if you want customized bespoke offerings for your organization, but individuals can go on there and start learning instantly.
That's great. Well, Kevin, I appreciate that there's resources for people to get started with, and then opportunity to work more deeply with you if that matches what their goals are.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for the conversation. I'd love to dig into psychology and philosophy myself, so I enjoyed it greatly. I hope it was valuable for you too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone listening.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you again soon, and hang out for me for a second while I wrap this up.
Yep.
Thanks. Well, it's a good reminder that as leaders, we need to create a space for critical thinking and for opening dialogue in terms of questioning each other and working to come to an agreement from a number of perspectives, and then keep track of what happens so that we can make good decisions in the after action report. Hope you enjoyed my time with Kevin Hannigan. I sure did. And I look forward to the next episode, and I hope you have a great week. Hope you find some AI tools that you can implement, can save some time from some of the mundane work in your day, and then use that time to go spend it with your friends, your family, and get outside and walk in the fresh air. It's Emanuel Rose, Marketing in the Age of AI.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.